Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Hutchison, and today I will be teaching you how to perform an acid-base titration. I understand that most of you have never done this before, so I'll explain everything in a way that's very simple to understand, not very complicated. So what exactly is a titration? Well, a titration is a method used to determine the concentration or the molarity of a specific substance, typically an acid and a base. First things first, safety precautions. You always want to wear jeans, closed-toed shoes, and goggles in a lab, especially when messing with things that are very harmful to your skin and eyes, like acids and bases. You want to make sure to tie long hair back and not wear loose-fitting clothing, as they could get caught and knock something over. And if they're available, be sure to wear gloves and an apron to protect your clothes even from harmful substances. So your necessary equipment, you're going to need one 50 milliliter burette, one 10 milliliter pipette, two 50 milliliter beakers, one 500 milliliter beaker, one Erlenmeyer flask, and a burette stand. You're also going to need a burette clamp, one funnel, a pipette bulb for the pipette, one bottle of your phenolphthalein indicator, 50 milliliters of your 1.00 molarity sodium hydroxide, so that's your known concentration value, and then 30 milliliters of nitric acid, that's what you're trying to find the concentration of. So for the setup, you want to label all of your glassware with what you're going to be putting into it. So you'll just take some tape and then write on it what substance you're putting into each glassware. Then you can go ahead and pour everything into the respective glassware. Make sure you're using the 500 milliliter beaker as waste, because that's the only one that's big enough for all your waste. So continued, screw the burette clamp onto the burette stand. And then you will put your burette into the burette clamp. And then place the funnel in the burette and make sure the burette is closed because you don't want anything coming out of it. And then you go ahead and put the all 50 milliliters of the NaOH through the funnel to the burette. Okay, preparing the Erlenmeyer flask. So place your 10 milliliter pipette into the beaker containing the HNO3. Now, using the pipette bulb, you go ahead and put the pipette into the beaker, and then take the bulb and squeeze the air out of it, and then place it over the pipette, and then you'll slowly release the bulb while you get exactly 10 milliliters of the HNO3 into it. And then when you have 10 milliliters of it in there, quickly take the bulb off and place your thumb over the pipette so you don't let any liquid out, and then move it over to the Erlenmeyer flask and release your thumb to let it pour in. After that, you'll add exactly 3 drops of your phenolphthalein indicator into the Erlenmeyer flask. Here's a little diagram of what I was just saying right here. So you have the pipette bulb over the pipette sucking up the HNO3, and then pouring the HNO3 into the Erlenmeyer flask and putting 3 drops of indicator in. So now it's time for the chemical reaction. So your Erlenmeyer flask is prepared, so go ahead and place it under the burette. Very, very slowly open the burette valve until the sodium hydroxide is just coming out maybe 5 drops per second, because you just don't want to pour too fast, or the reaction will happen faster than you can stop it. So while the sodium hydroxide is coming out of, or going into the Erlenmeyer flask, be sure to continuously swirl the Erlenmeyer flask so the solutions get mixed together evenly. And you can see here the NaOH is coming out of the burette and into the HNO3 and phenolphthalein solution in the Erlenmeyer flask, and be sure you're swirling it. Okay, so you'll want to continue swirling and allowing the NaOH to come into the Erlenmeyer flask until it starts turning a dull pink color. Once the solution starts to turn pink, close the burette valve and continue swirling it. It needs to stay that light pink color for at least 30 seconds so you know the reaction has met its equivalence point, and you can use that data to calculate the concentration of molarity. If the color fades before 30 seconds, be sure to repeat steps 3 through 6, adding more NaOH into the Erlenmeyer flask. You can see right here, this is about what your final color is going to look like. It might be a little more faint than that, but if it's darker than that, then you know you put too much NaOH in and you'll need to start over. So, recording your data. After each titration, be sure to record your initial volume of the burette, the final volume of the burette after solution has poured out of it, and the volume delivered. That would be your final minus your initial volume. You're going to need all of this data to perform the necessary calculations to figure out what the concentration of the molarity is. To get an accurate reading of the volumes, record the volume from the bottom of the meniscus. And the meniscus is this little curve in the water, or solution, rather, right here, that forms in the glassware. So you'll want to read the milliliters right from the bottom of this curve right here. After you record your data, you'll want to repeat for 2 more titrations, for a total of 3 titrations. And before you begin another titration, be sure you pour the contents of the Erlenmeyer flask into the beaker labeled waste. That's the 500 milliliter beaker. And then clean the Erlenmeyer flask out with deionized water. That way you get any remnants of the solution in there out of there. You don't want to contaminate the next titration with solution that was already in there from the previous one. So in summary, make sure you dress according to the safety guidelines, because you don't want to get hurt in the lab, and set everything up before you start to keep it organized so you're not confused with what's what. Make sure to constantly swirl the Erlenmeyer flask. It needs to be constantly swirled so the solutions get mixed together evenly. Be sure you know how to close the burette valve, because when you're pouring the NaOH into the Erlenmeyer flask and you're ready to close it, this has happened to myself several times. I've accidentally turned it more open to where it's pouring out faster, and just completely screws up your data because it's gone way past the equivalence point, and you'll just have to start over. So make sure you're saving yourself some time there by knowing how to close it properly. Read the burette at the bottom of the meniscus to get your data accurately recorded. Be sure you record your data to the hundredths place. In other words, 2 places after the decimal point. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I have my phone number, my email, and my office location here, Math Building Room 114. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you. Have a great day.